All right, so my sculpture is done. I am ready to make the actual jar or the can. So I have my short little Pringles can. You can use a long one if you want to. I have newspaper. I have a special paper mache glue that I use here in the classroom. You can make your own by mixing flour and water until you have like a nice paste, or you can mix regular Elmer's liquid glue with some water, just thin it down. Now, if you have none of those things, you can also use brown masking tape to cover your can, but you want to hide the label. So here's the brown masking tape, or tan, I guess, that I could also use to cover this up. Now, if you're using newspaper, first of all, congratulations. Newspapers are really hard to find these days. People just don't read them anymore. We get all of our news online. But newspaper print, or newsprint, this is the perfect material for doing paper mache. The paper is really thin. It glues itself together really well, and it's easy to rip. So whenever you're using newspaper, you actually want to rip the paper, not cut. That way you get all of these nice little fibers. So because it's made from tree fiber, it has all these little fine hairs, and it actually lets them kind of interlock when you glue them together and lay them down. So it becomes very, very strong. Now notice I'm starting from the top of the newspaper and ripping down. It rips a lot easier. When you try to go across, you don't have as much control. I don't get a straight line. That's okay for this project. I don't need it to be perfect, but it can help. So I'm gonna rip a bunch of newspaper. Okay, here we go. So now that I have all my newspaper bits, I'm going to dip a little bit in the glue very carefully. And with my fingers, I'm going to pull any of that extra glue back into the jar. And just cover this whole piece of newspaper until the whole thing's wet or damp. I don't want it soaking wet. Now I'm going to start wrapping it around my can. And generally I want to go in the same direction for my first layer. I'll be overlapping as I go. Once you get the glue on your fingers, every time you touch a new piece of newspaper, it's going to stick to your hand. So be really careful. You won't be able to rip more newspaper until your hands are clean and dry. So I'm going to make sure that my pieces are overlapping, and I think it's okay if I get it some on the inside. Oop, I'm going to be careful not to drip all over my clean newspaper. So we have some overlapping. I have a lot of extra glue on here, so I'm going to smooth it out. I got some lumps happening here too. So I'm going to pull it a little tighter. There we go, no more lumps. Okay, so I could just grab that with my finger because it has glue on it. It's already kind of wet. Now I'm going to get that excess glue off into the cup. Start laying this down. Now since I'm going top to bottom and I'm laying these horizontally, I want to be consistent. So I'll grab a piece here, and that's a corner piece. Looks like a rocket ship. So I'm going to get that glue all over it. There we go. I can rip that part and lay it here. Too much glue. Oh no, don't let it sink. Okay.
So I'm making sure my pieces overlap each other so that it has a stronger bond. This is normally going to be more important when you're building a 3D piece from scratch. Since this has cardboard underneath it, I'm just making sure that there's no holes, no gaps. Now we're going to cover this whole thing at least 4 times so that there's no original label showing. And this will also make sure that our paper mache doesn't fall off later.
I decided to do paper mache on the plastic lid, but I totally forgot that this does not stick to plastic. So this might be a great technique for making a lid out of paper mache that you can attach to it later. However, I couldn't get the flaps to stay down on the sides, so just paint over it.